It was meant to be a quiet evening, an intimate royal gathering behind closed doors. But in a single moment, an offhand remark from Queen Camilla shattered the atmosphere. What began as light conversation turned icy, and Princess Charlotte's expression said it all. What did Camilla say? And why did it leave the entire room stunned into silence? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The gathering had been intended as a low-key moment of respite, an unpublicized family dinner during the school holidays, tucked away in the safety of a private royal estate. The kind of evening where the crown's future could be set aside in favor of laughter, shared memories, and generational closeness. But what unfolded that night would leave a stain far deeper than anyone expected. Camilla, reportedly in a jovial mood, had taken center stage in the conversation. Buoyed by her increasing public profile and King Charles's visible reliance on her, she was animated, perhaps too much so. As the table shifted from anecdotes to discussions about upcoming roles, patronages, and the visibility of the younger royals, Camilla made what she believed to be a light-hearted remark. But that one sentence, heard clearly by Princess Charlotte, cut far deeper than intended. It was a passing comment, laced with the kind of dismissive tone that can wound without warning. A quip about certain members of the younger generation being ornamental, not central to the crown's future. Charlotte, seated nearby, heard every word. What followed was a dramatic shift in atmosphere that not even seasoned aides could smooth over. Charlotte, usually composed and cheerful, went noticeably quiet. Her posture stiffened, her smile disappeared. Catherine noticed instantly. A subtle touch of the hand under the table, a whispered question. But Charlotte gave no reply. Across the room, William, engaged in his own conversation, glanced over and caught the tension. His jaw set, his expression tightened. He didn't interrupt the moment, but his body language changed. And for those attuned to the finely calibrated performances of royal events, it was clear something had gone terribly wrong. Aides, scrambling to de-escalate, tried to redirect conversation. One even attempted a toast, but the mood had changed. The warmth was gone. Camilla, perhaps realizing her misstep too late, reportedly attempted to clarify, laughing it off, brushing it aside. But the damage was done. In the hours that followed, whispers spread. Aides were overheard calling the moment a disaster, with one noting it was the kind of slip that doesn't stay private for long. And they were right. By morning, subtle signals had already begun circulating: coded phrases, tense silences, a statement withheld, a photo opportunity cancelled. But this was no passing. Misstep Camilla's words touched a deeper nerve, one that had been quietly forming inside palace walls for months. Sources close to the family revealed that Camilla's comment wasn't just insensitive, it was deeply personal. And it wasn't the first time. What exactly did Charlotte hear, and why did it strike such a painful chord with both mother and daughter? The alleged remark, made in the casually dismissive tone that has followed Camilla throughout her rise to queen consort, was quietly devastating. In front of several senior family members, she reportedly referred to Charlotte's future as more ceremonial than significant. A comment that, on the surface, may have sounded like royal pragmatism, but beneath it carried a cold undertone. To a young girl raised within the walls of royal tradition, but also under the wing of a fiercely devoted mother, those words didn't just question her future. They diminished her presence. And worse, Camilla allegedly followed it with a comparison, a reference to George and Louis, Charlotte's brothers, as the ones who would carry the real weight, a hierarchy drawn in real time. And Charlotte, intelligent beyond her years, understood every word. For Catherine, the sting was immediate. Not just because of what was said, but because of the pattern it reflected. This wasn't an isolated incident. There had been previous gatherings, private discussions, and even formal planning sessions where Charlotte's involvement had been downplayed or deferred. Decisions made without consultation, appearances adjusted, subtle omissions in briefings that seemed minor until now. Catherine had long noticed it, but held her silence out of decorum, trying to shield her daughter from court politics. But now, with Charlotte visibly hurt and the room bearing witness, the silence was no longer protection, it was complicity. Charlotte's awareness of her royal role had grown steadily over the years. She had studied photographs, listened closely during public ceremonies, and asked questions her parents sometimes struggled to answer. She knew she wasn't just a daughter, she was part of a line, a system, a dynasty, and for a child who had watched her mother carry the pressures of modern monarchy with grace and strength, being told she was merely symbolic was more than an insult. It was erasure. It cut at the very root of identity and belonging. Catherine felt it. William saw it, and William, though outwardly composed, did not let it go unnoticed. He said nothing that night. He made no confrontation, but his expression told a different story, stone cold, unreadable, withdrawn. Later, behind the scenes, he reportedly asked for a detailed account of the conversation from one of the aides, not to react immediately, but to record the moment, to remember it, to know where lines had been drawn. William, ever the strategist, understood that direct retaliation would only deepen fractures. But what he couldn't ignore was the message his daughter had received and the precedent it set if left unchallenged. As the whispers spread and interpretations spiraled, the palace was forced to confront what it feared most. This wasn't just a child's moment, it was the spark of something much larger. Camilla's remark wasn't the first. Behind closed doors, there had been a quiet string of diminishing gestures toward the younger generation, especially Charlotte. Was this a pattern of subtle exclusion, or something far more intentional? The signs were always there, if you knew where to look. At one royal luncheon 2 years prior, Charlotte had eagerly tried to share a story about a school charity event, only to be politely talked over, as Camilla shifted the discussion toward Louis's emerging charisma. At another gathering, when Charlotte handed a hand-drawn card to her great-grandfather during a family tribute, Camilla reportedly joked that such things were more charming when George did them. These may have seemed harmless in isolation, momentary slips of preference, but when observed in sequence, the tone shifted. It became a pattern, a thread of indifference stitched through otherwise polished royal fabric. Within palace corridors, whispers had grown. Camilla, while celebrated for adapting to her role as queen consort, had made several offhand remarks about traditional lines of succession and the symbolic nature of certain roles. It was always vague, always layered in plausible deniability. But aides, particularly those closest to Catherine, noticed that these symbolic roles always seemed to point back to Charlotte. One aide described the Queen's tone in private as dismissive but not overt, a kind of passive diminishment that eroded confidence quietly and left little evidence behind. Even Anne and Sophie, both known for avoiding palace drama, had noticed it. Sources suggest that in at least one private conversation, Sophie had commented to Anne about the way Charlotte's contributions were constantly undercut or redirected by Camilla. But neither woman acted, perhaps because they knew how dangerous it was to speak out, or perhaps because they'd seen it happen before. Either way, silence became complicity, and within that silence, Charlotte began to draw closer to the one person who would never let her be sidelined, her mother. Catherine's bond with Charlotte deepened, not through lavish gestures or royal training, but through quiet affirmations. Long walks, honest conversations, reassurance. Catherine, having endured her own share of subtle cuts, knew how dangerous unspoken hierarchy could be. She saw the writing on the wall and made sure Charlotte did not internalize it. And yet, the pain lingered. Because the contrast between public perception and private treatment had never been more stark. The press adored Charlotte, her composure, her humor, her confidence. Social media lit up whenever she appeared. Headlines praised her poise. She was called the star of the balcony, the future's quiet force. But behind palace walls, she was too often an afterthought. Some courtiers speculated that Camilla's discomfort wasn't with Charlotte herself, but with what she represented. The rise of a new generation of women in the monarchy who wouldn't be content to smile and stand silently. Charlotte wasn't just a royal daughter. She was a symbol of change, of lineage meeting modernity, and in a house still wrestling with its own identity that made her both a promise and a threat. But while the adults argued over intentions, a very real shift was taking place in Charlotte herself, and the world was about to witness it. Charlotte may be young, but those closest to her say she carries herself with a maturity that rivals even senior royals. After the incident, something in her changed, and it was noticed not just by family, but the press. In the days following Camilla's remark, Charlotte didn't retreat. She didn't sulk or lash out. Instead, she did something far more powerful. She became still, not frozen, but composed. At a public school event just 3 days later, all eyes were on her. Observers expected signs of strain or fragility, but what they saw instead was poise. She stood tall, listened attentively, and spoke with calm assurance. Teachers later described her as present but private, with a gaze that seemed far older than her years. It was as if, in the wake of the slight, Charlotte had decided something quietly, something permanent. That she would not be defined by anyone's expectations. That she would not be ornamental. Catherine walked beside her daughter that day, offering no grand gestures, no dramatic signals, just silent, unwavering support. A glance here, a gentle touch on the shoulder, a whispered word at just the right moment. She understood that Charlotte was walking a line many children would never even see, carrying the weight of legacy before she could fully understand its cost. And so, she gave her what Camilla never could, space to grow with dignity. William, too, began carving out time away from the chaos of palace obligations. He sat with Charlotte, not just as a father, but as someone who had once been the boy at the center of royal storms. He spoke to her not just about duty, but about identity, strength, and the power of silence. He told her that sometimes the most effective answer is simply showing who you are without saying a word. Inside the palace, whispers shifted. Staff who had once seen Charlotte as sweet and precocious began to describe her differently. Focused, observant, quietly fierce. One senior aide reportedly told a friend, "She watches everything, and she remembers it all." And soon, the world began to see it too. In public appearances, subtle moments were captured: Charlotte adjusting her posture before a speech, gently guiding a younger child into frame, exchanging a composed look with her mother as flashbulbs exploded. These weren't accidents, they were signals. Small, graceful acts of self-possession. Social media took notice. Clips of Charlotte began circulating rapidly. Viewers praised her presence, her confidence, her empathy. She was no longer just the Spare's sister. She was being recast in the public's imagination as a quiet pillar of the monarchy's next chapter. Hashtags trended globally. Commentators called her a bridge between tradition and the future. And through it all, she said nothing. She didn't need to, but while Charlotte grew in grace, the storm inside the palace was only intensifying, and Camilla wasn't done speaking her mind. Behind the marble walls of Kensington Palace, a quiet fury erupted. Catherine had stayed silent long enough, but when it came to her daughter, that silence broke. What followed was a confrontation that royal aides still whisper about in hushed tones. Days after the now infamous family gathering, a private meeting was arranged, discreet, off-calendar, and tightly managed. No fanfare, no press. Just two women behind a closed door, the Queen Consort and the Princess of Wales. What unfolded in that room did not involve raised voices or theatrical gestures. It was, by all accounts, calm on the surface but seething beneath. Catherine, known for her composure, opened the conversation with precision. She did not accuse, but she did not hesitate. She spoke directly about what had happened, about Charlotte's reaction, about the broader implications of Camilla's words and what they revealed about how the younger royals, particularly Charlotte, were being perceived and positioned. Catherine didn't demand an apology. She demanded recognition. Recognition of a pattern, recognition of a mindset. She challenged Camilla not on authority, but on judgment. Why had Charlotte been repeatedly sidelined? Why were her contributions minimized? her future questioned, while others were elevated. Catherine asked these questions not just as a mother but as a senior royal who had spent years navigating power structures that favored silence over change. Camilla, unaccustomed to being confronted so directly, did not yield. Instead, she reportedly described herself as a realist, not an antagonist. She claimed her remarks were rooted in protocol, not personal bias. That she was simply stating the facts of royal structure, facts that Catherine, of all people, should understand. But Catherine was unshaken. She reminded Camilla that facts could be weaponized, that perception was power. That in a monarchy constantly fighting for relevance, dismissing the role of a strong, intelligent young girl was not just poor taste, it was dangerous. The conversation turned sharper as they broached legacy. Camilla allegedly implied that the monarchy's future couldn't accommodate everyone's ambitions. Catherine responded with a chilling calm. "My daughter doesn't need ambition. She has purpose." Those words, according to one aide, changed the tone of the entire meeting. William, fully aware of what was taking place, chose to stay away, not out of indifference, but intention. This wasn't his moment, it was Catherine's, and she delivered. Aides present for the final minutes of the exchange described the air as heavy, the energy volatile without volume. One said it was the first time they saw Camilla truly unnerved. When the meeting ended, neither woman lingered. Catherine left first, head high, unflinching. Camilla remained behind, reportedly requesting space before returning to her schedule. What was said in that room never reached the public in full, but the aftermath made its impact clear. Senior staff shifted their allegiances. Future events were subtly reorganized. And Catherine, without ever stepping outside protocol, made it known. Her children would not be quiet figures in the background of someone else's reign. Not now. Not ever. As tensions escalated between the two most prominent women in the monarchy, one figure emerged unexpectedly, ready to defend Charlotte in her own way. For years, Princess Anne stayed out of royal disputes, but this time, she couldn't. In a rare and pointed comment, she sent a message across the palace. Camilla had gone too far. The luncheon was informal, intended as a morale reset after weeks of internal strain. Only senior family members were present, and conversation was light until it wasn't. With the air still heavy from the fallout of Camilla's remark and Catherine's quiet confrontation days earlier, a sense of unresolved tension clung to every exchange. It was during a reflective moment, as talk shifted toward the future of the monarchy, that Anne spoke measured, composed, and unmistakably deliberate. She referred to Charlotte not with titles or fluff, but with piercing clarity. "She's one to watch." The room stilled. It wasn't just praise, it was prophecy. Anne, long viewed as the firm's iron spine, had just endorsed the very person Camilla had tried to diminish. But she didn't stop there. Turning slightly toward Camilla, Anne added something that would become the quote whispered behind every closed palace door. "Legacy is not decided by hierarchy, it's decided by character." There was no mistaking the target of those words. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone, laced with decades of royal discipline, said everything. And the impact was immediate. Camilla's smile faltered. Charles, uncharacteristically quiet, made no attempt to deflect. Even William, whose body language had remained guarded, allowed a single glance of acknowledgement toward his aunt. Aides in attendance later described the moment as a warning cloaked in elegance. Anne had used no names, issued no accusations, but her choice of words, her timing, and her authority cut deeper than any public scandal ever could. It wasn't rebellion, it was rebalancing. It was the Queen's daughter, one of the last living custodians of an older, unshakable code, calling out a breach in decorum too great to ignore. And for those who understood the subtext, it marked a turning point. Behind the scenes, quiet shifts began. Staff who once orbited Camilla's office with blind loyalty grew cautious. Decisions that previously flowed through her desk were delayed, rerouted, or second-guessed. Shortly after, the palace released a carefully worded statement. It wasn't headline-grabbing or overt, but nestled in the announcement was a single line that caught attention. Princess Charlotte's growing presence reflects a future both grounded in tradition and inspired by strength. It was a small sentence, but it carried weight. Internally, it was read as a direct counter to Camilla's narrative, and Anne's fingerprints were all over it. More importantly, allies began emerging. Sophie, once neutral, reportedly sent a handwritten note to Catherine. Key advisors, long silent, began offering more vocal support. The tide was shifting, not in a media circus, but in whispered strategy, restructured appearances, and subtle acknowledgements. Because when Anne speaks, she doesn't speak for approval, she speaks to correct the course. And this time, she had chosen her moment with surgical precision. The message was clear. The monarchy's strength was not built on exclusion, and those who tried to silence Charlotte had underestimated the force gathering quietly behind her. And while allies gathered behind Charlotte, Camilla's inner circle began to fracture, leaving her more isolated than ever. The headlines changed. No longer about unity or grace now, they told a story of tension, favoritism, and quiet rebellion. Camilla's team tried to control the narrative, but it was too late. What began as a single, seemingly harmless comment at a private gathering had evolved into a palace-wide reckoning. Public opinion, once cautiously optimistic about Camilla's evolving role, had begun to turn. Polling numbers dipped sharply, her favorability sliding to its lowest since her ascension as Queen Consort. What followed wasn't coincidence, it was calculated exposure. Anonymous leaks emerged from within the palace, not just confirming the incident with Charlotte, but tying it to a series of past remarks Camilla had allegedly made. Remarks downplaying the importance of the younger royals, particularly the girls. Comments interpreted as relics of a more outdated, hierarchical mindset. And in the current climate, those whispers landed like thunderclaps. Catherine, meanwhile, did not say a word publicly. She didn't have to. The public responded with resounding support. Online platforms flooded with messages praising her quiet dignity, her protection of her children, and her refusal to retaliate. She was painted as the calm in the storm, the mother who refused to allow power games to touch her daughter's sense of worth. Editorials applauded her restraint, commentators praised her grace under pressure, and in contrast, Camilla appeared exposed at odds with a younger generation of royals increasingly seen as the moral center of the monarchy's future. As if timed for maximum effect, tabloid exposés began resurfacing stories long buried past moments when Camilla had allegedly marginalized Diana, dismissive quotes about the need for too many appearances, even a decades-old anecdote about Camilla once questioning whether the monarchy should remain so female-forward. Separately, they might have seemed dated. Together, they created a pattern, and that pattern fed the narrative. Royal watchers on television and social media began raising the same question. Was Camilla still the right face of the monarchy's future? Then came the most curious sign of all. A high-profile engagement for Camilla, set to mark the opening of a new charitable initiative tied to the Queen Consort's legacy, was abruptly pulled. No explanation, no postponement, just quietly erased from the calendar. The press noticed immediately. Sources within the royal press pool confirmed they had received press kits just days earlier, scripts written, schedules circulated. And then, nothing. One insider claimed the event had been pulled due to optics. Another said it was an internal decision to let the dust settle. But few believed it was coincidence. Camilla was being sidelined, at least temporarily, and it wasn't just the press watching. Within palace walls, trust in her leadership had begun to erode. Advisors recalibrated their strategies. Communications teams shifted their language. A new power bloc, formed subtly around Catherine and supported by Anne's quiet influence, began drawing the public's gaze and goodwill away from Camilla. What had once been a fragile truce between generations of royal women had been shattered, and no press statement could put it back together. But as the monarchy reeled from internal fallout, one appearance changed everything, and this time, It was Charlotte who held the spotlight. Trooping the colour, the nation watched. And there, standing tall and proud, was Princess Charlotte, radiant, composed, and fiercely present. It was more than a photo op. It was a message. The crowd gathered in breathless anticipation, as they always did for the monarchy's most iconic annual display. But this year felt different. The undercurrent of tension from recent weeks still rippled quietly through headlines and conversations. Yet as the royal family stepped onto the balcony, the energy shifted. At the center of it all, unmistakably visible, perfectly positioned, stood Princess Charlotte, dressed in elegance, but wrapped in something far stronger, intention. Her posture was deliberate, her gaze unwavering. The press didn't miss it. Analysts immediately noted her precise placement beside Catherine, just a step away from William, and strikingly ahead of where Camilla had been positioned. Camilla was there, yes, but she was further down the line than expected. No longer the visual anchor beside the king. Instead, the spotlight had been redirected toward the future. Catherine's pride was subtle but unmistakable. She didn't need to say a word. Her smile, her closeness to Charlotte, her gentle nods, each was a testament to the silent journey they'd walked through fire together. Standing beside her daughter, Catherine sent her own message, not of defiance, but of endurance. Meanwhile, keen-eyed photographers captured a moment just before the balcony appearance, Princess Anne leaning down to speak briefly with Charlotte. No one could hear what was said, but the photo told a story of legacy being passed, of one strong woman honoring the strength in another. Within hours, the internet erupted. "The future is female," read one headline. "Charlotte's moment," declared another. Social media flooded with admiration for the young princess, celebrating her not just for her presence, but for what it represented. It wasn't simply about pageantry, it was about power. And it was clear the monarchy had taken note. This arrangement, this framing, was no accident. It was the palace's way of reclaiming the narrative, of redefining who would carry the torch in years to come, not as silent figures, but as active forces within the institution. For Camilla, the optics were impossible to ignore. Her distance on the balcony marked a shift, not just in physical space, but in influence. She smiled, as protocol required, but the message had already landed. The public wasn't watching her anymore. Their eyes were fixed on Charlotte, on Catherine, on Anne, on the future. This was not rebellion. This was evolution. And it was unfolding in real time. But this wasn't just a moment in time, it was the beginning of a new dynamic within the firm. One that would alter the course of royal succession politics. What started with a careless comment became a national conversation, not about protocol, but about identity, dignity, and the quiet strength of a young girl growing into history. Princess Charlotte, once regarded simply as the charming middle child of William and Catherine, was now something far more potent in the eyes of the public. She had become a symbol not of rebellion, but of legacy. No longer defined by tiaras or public waves, she was shaping a role for herself that whispered of strength, subtlety, and defiance not born of words, but presence. As media shifted its tone, headlines stopped referring to her as adorable or cute. Instead, terms like steadfast, poised, and emerging leader began to surface. And behind this shift stood Catherine, who had done what few royal mothers dared. She had shielded her daughter without silencing her, guided her without pushing her into the glare. Catherine's parenting choices became the subject of op-eds, books, even university debates. She was praised for balancing the impossible, raising a future royal with modern independence while upholding the weight of centuries-old tradition. But Catherine hadn't done it alone. Princess Anne's quiet mentorship became more visible, even if unofficial. Her subtle nods during public engagements, the choice to walk beside Charlotte during certain events, and the deliberate moments of proximity all told a story of solidarity. Anne had watched dynasties rise and fracture from the inside. And now, it seemed, she had chosen to become a steady hand behind the next generation of royal women. The message was unmistakable. Charlotte would not be alone, nor overlooked, ever again. Meanwhile, Camilla's public presence began to shift. Less visible at family-centered occasions, fewer speeches referencing future roles or younger royals. There was no grand retreat, just a quiet stepping back, a recognition, perhaps, that her role in shaping the narrative had reached its limits. While the palace remained tight-lipped, insiders whispered of strategy meetings behind closed doors. And William, ever watchful, ever calculating, was said to be quietly recalibrating the family's public image, one that emphasized unity, modern values, and the strength of women like Catherine, Anne, and Charlotte. It wasn't about erasing the past, it was about redefining the future. And so, what began as an overlooked moment at a family gathering had spiraled into something far greater. The firm had realigned itself not through public declarations or televised apologies, but through shifting glances, recalibrated protocols, and a newfound reverence for a girl who had once just been a princess in the background. Charlotte's rise wasn't loud, but it was lasting. She had earned her place, not by birthright alone, but by resilience. The monarchy, wounded and reeling, had found a new anchor, and it came not from the crown, but from the unwavering presence of a young girl who refused to be dismissed. Because in the monarchy, battles aren't always fought with crowns and declarations. Sometimes they begin with a whisper and end with the world watching. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.